So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this special high-level virtual event in the lead up to the 57th session of the UN Statistical Commission. And this is also the first open meeting of the IAG SDG, the interagency and expert group on SDG indicator in 2026. My name is Yongyi Min. I'm the acting chief of the development data and outreach branch at the United Nations Statistical Division. So this event will bring together perspective from the IAG SDGs, member states, custodian agencies, and stakeholders to reflect on a decade of SDG monitoring experience. So our discussion will draw on the IAG SDG task team report on lessons learned from monitoring the SDG. This is a background document prepared for the 57th UN Statistical Commission and explore how the development, implementation, and evolution of the Global Indicator Framework can inform efforts to accelerate progress in the final years to 2030. So we hope this will also serve as a space for open dialogue on how SDG monitoring can better support decision-making, accountability, and sustainable development going forward. So before we begin, I would like to note a few housekeeping items. So microphones have been disabled to avoid accidental interruptions. To submit questions to the presenters, please enter them in the Q&A windows. We'll do our best to address as many of them as possible. So for general comments, please use the chat. So this event is being recorded, and the recording and the presentations will be made available on the event page following the sessions. So without further ado, and it's my honor to introduce the acting director of the UN Statistics Division, Ms. Shantanu Mukherjee, for welcoming remarks. Over to you, Shantanu.
Thanks so much, Yongyi. Hi, Anu, and other colleagues. Greetings to everybody from the UN Statistics Division in New York. I'm so happy to welcome you to this webinar in advance of the upcoming 57th session of the UN Statistical Commission. My thanks to the IAEG SDGs co-chairs and members, the task team on lessons learned, our country colleagues, custodian agencies, and partners for convening this timely discussion. Colleagues, in this final half decade of the 2030 agenda, the question before us is not just how far have we come, but also how can we use what we have learned to accelerate progress now, and of course, to inform what comes next. This is why reflecting on a decade of lessons in SDG monitoring, particularly the development and operationalization of the Global Indicator Framework, is so important. Over the past decade, the Global SDG Indicator Framework has driven rapid methodological development in many areas, expanded data availability across so many indicators of human progress, and strengthened the role of National Statistical Offices as coordinators of increasingly complex data ecosystems. We see this in the numbers. In 2016, the IAG SDGs faced the unprecedented task of developing a global monitoring framework for 17 goals and 169 targets. Of the initial 232 indicators, close to 40% lacked agreed methodologies or data systems and were classified as Tier 3, requiring rapid methodological development across complex policy areas like peace and justice, ocean health, and gender equality. By 2020, just 4 years later, Tier 3 was effectively ended, with every indicator supported by an agreed methodology. This achievement reflects technical expertise and collaboration across custodian agencies, National Statistical Offices and partners, representing one of the largest coordinated statistical development efforts to date. We see this reflected in the global SDG database, which expanded nearly tenfold from about 330,000 data points in 2016 to over 3 million by 2025. In parallel, there have also been advances in disaggregation, although here the story is more mixed. On the one hand, we have learned afresh about the power of disaggregated data to expose persistent inequalities and strengthen our effectiveness in achieving the leave no one behind principle. On the other hand, we have also gained a fresh appreciation of the need for new methods, prioritization driven by clear principles, and sustained investment. I think we can also look back on how the SDG framework has reshaped national reporting and the use of statistics in voluntary national reviews, which has grown steadily. Around 2/3 of the countries reporting in 2025 used visual and analytical tools, reflecting not just increasing data use and statistical capacity, but also a desire to communicate better, making themselves more accountable to their own citizens. All this while, implementation has also revealed important lessons for the statistical community. Navigating a complex landscape, balancing technical considerations of measurement and feasibility with policy imperatives aimed at ensuring inclusivity and ambition. We know that methodological readiness has varied across domains, and the breadth of the framework, while absolutely essential, has also involved trade-offs and synergies at different levels, which makes the task of translating monitoring into actionable intelligence much more complex and country-specific. Friends, as we look to accelerate action in the remaining years, it is important to remember that acceleration does not always come from radically new strategies, but rather from smarter use of what we already have. Today's session will highlight the findings from the background document developed by the IAEG SDGs task team on lessons learned from SDG monitoring, complemented by regional, custodian, and stakeholder perspectives. The second part of our webinar will showcase country and custodian efforts to use data as a tool to accelerate progress towards 2030. Our webinar is a chance to reflect on what has worked, where challenges persist, and how data can best be used to support better decision-making and accountability over these final years. Inevitably, what we discuss today will also inform how we approach the challenges of complex global goal setting for development in the future. I look forward to learning from your experiences. Thank you for this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you.
Thank you very much, Shantanu, for your remarks and also for framing the importance of today's discussion as well. Also, over the past decade, the global statistical community has built something remarkable, and the lessons from this experience are precisely what we are here to explore today. So our aim is not only to reflect on what SDG monitoring has taught us, but also to draw on those lessons to sharpen our collective efforts in the final and critical years to 2030. So I'm pleased now to introduce the IAG SDG co-chair, Liva Ragnaroth from Statistics Norway, who will moderate the rest of the event. Over to you, Liva.
Thank you, Jongi, and hello everyone, and thank you for joining this high-level IAG SDG side event today. So my name is Liva Ragnaroth. I work with Statistics Norway, and as Jongi mentioned, I'm the co-chair, one of the co-chairs of the IAG SDGs. So we have several presenters with us here today, and you can read more about them on our event page. So I will quickly move to the first session, where we will focus on lessons and insights from over a decade of SDG monitoring. And it will first include an overview of the background document developed by the IAG SDGs task team on lessons learned from monitoring the SDGs. And the UNSD colleagues will also include a link to the document in the chat for you. It will be Mariana Neves, co-chair of the task team, who will take you through the report. Mariana is with the UNDP Global Policy Center for Governance, but she also has the unique experience of being with an NSO early in the SDG process, representing Cabo Verde. So Mariana, over to you.
Thank you so much, Liv, and thank you, colleagues. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I have the pleasure to present what we have learned in this process. It is a lot of information, but let me now start with what we were requested to do. Next, please. So the task team, is it under the IAG SDG, was asked to systematically identify, analyze, and document lessons learned from developing, implementing the SDG monitoring framework. And as it was already said before, this is for our learning now, but also for the future. And we wanted to have some actionable insights. The overall work will be divided in two phases. The first phase, which is the one that we're going to present to you today, focuses on the global level, and it's running until March this year, where this document that my colleagues have very kindly put in the chat will go for discussion in the Statistical Commission as one of several very interesting background documents, also worked by other teams. And the second phase, which will start, it is now focusing on the thematic, regional, and national level. And I must say that we already have some insight, but we still have to actually start that part, and that we're very excited to do. But today I'll focus on what we learn in the global level. Next, please. And we have some broad learning, and we'll go through more in detail as we go through the document. But one is, and this is unquestionable, and it's also a testimony by, we have 268 colleagues, 69 colleagues on the call at this moment. The SDGs is a landmark achievement, that is unquestionable. And it provides this comprehensive monitoring system for the global good. We build on existing progress for future efforts, strengthening simplified SDG monitoring rather than starting from scratch. So we already have a lot of knowledge accumulated among us. It is understood that we should engage the decision early. I will talk a little bit more of that in a moment. And it should make future-ready frameworks. So what we did, next slide, please. What we did is, in this task team, we have the pleasure of having 26 experts with a very diverse background. We have former IAG members, former co-chairs of the IAG. We have colleagues from civil society organizations, international organizations, private sector. We have a very broad group of colleagues that all bringing their very unique expertise in different and very unique point of views as well. And we must say that also, since 2015 until now, there is a massive amount of documentation. A lot of you, including a lot of you in the school, have been writing your experience, have been writing your lessons learned, you have been writing about your custodianship role or your national role. So there was a massive amount of reference that we could build on. And this is what was the basis for the discussion and between the members, and start distilling it into two parts. One is lessons learned from developing the framework, so those initial years where we were developing until the moment it was approved. And the second part, as you'll see in the document, is from design to making operationalizing the framework. And all of this was distilled into 8 recommendations that I'll go through now. Next. The first recommendation that we have is very linked to what already said. we had an extremely ambitious framework. We have this 17 goals with its respective 179 targets. They were politically ambitious. It is broadly framed. The frame, which is 234 indicators, is a major achievement. And achievement because we arrived to a consensus, is an achievement because of the global consultation. And I must say that I will not be able to do justice to everything, or all the very good, positive things that we have on the framework. But I'll go through some very, very more crucial at this stage. We fully understand the goal and target setting is a political process, as it should, but the statistical community also saw that there was an implication on the target setting. We ended up, and again, it's not at all criticism to the target, it's just their translation into indicators. We had some target that it was very, very hard to translate into indicator that could assess the achievement, measurability, feasibility. But also it was a little bit difficult to actually translate. We had very broad concepts in some cases, and defined concepts in other cases. And this had an impact on how we move from the framework from the target to the global indicator framework. Since there was a considerable amount of achievement and a lot of things have been addressed, and we now have this foundation that can serve for the last 5 years or for the next years. So our first recommendation is that we need a clear, quantifiable target. And we should build from the strengths of the SDG, and we should have this statistical expertise embedded as early as possible when we design the agenda. It was, I must say, it was embedded, but, and there was, you'll see through the document, there was massive statistical documents that were provided, but we might need additional effort for the future. Next, the recommendation, and I request, is on, we saw from the MDGs, we had a very interesting assessment, and it went we have a lot of learning coming from the SDGs, the MDGs, and there was a lot of achievements. And one of the things that we saw learning from that is that we needed this global structure to support us moving through the global definition of the indicators, but also to the entire SDGs. And that was the IAG SDG. So we need this structure together with clear technical process, clear roles, responsibilities, and decision process for all stakeholders. The third recommendation regards the indicator framework itself. The indicator framework was built in 9 months. It is extremely rich in it comes from the consultation of all types of stakeholders. What we saw is that although it is already great, we need more transparency in the resource-aware process. So we had to take a better account of the resources necessary to implement. Next, please. This is the fourth, now moving from the design to the implementation. We saw that, of course, we have this broad framework, but this has also brought some burden. And so we need to optimize what we have. We saw that we have very powerful, very new tools like citizen data, AI, Earth observation, modeling, data linkage. We have a lot that can be better optimized to respond to the needs. Next, please. Another lesson, this is more on the resources and mandates. The framework brought much broader responsibilities to all stakeholders, the NSOs, the UN system, and we're working with a much broader amount of partners, amount of data, of new systems, but we also need more investment both on the system and on the clear mandates as well, so the several institutions can operate more efficiently. Next, please. The sixth, and I'm almost done, the sixth one is on the data flows. So the way that we work is that we have the countries, the several actors producing the data, and data comes to the global database. And with all of that, all of us can measure progress at the country level, regional level, global level. And we have one major achievement, several, but one of them that I would like to highlight is the entire collaboration made between the IAG and the Committee for the Coordination of Statistical Activities. They helped improve coordination, they have improved data flows. This has been very effective, but still there is some room for improvement in terms of prioritizing national data, ensuring systematic country validation, harmonizing international data collection to reduce reporting burdens. So it is an area that we can still move one step forward. It will make it easier for all the actors in the system. And now for the seventh, lessons learned. And I think I have 2 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, at this stage. I'll try to respect it. I'm looking at leave. So now we go to the 7, and the 7 is we had throughout the sports, and all of us, we know that we produce when there's a demand, and we need the statistics, the political support. We have venues, very important venues like the VNRs that have helped creating the link between the data and the policy side. We need, and we see that we will be more effective the more we have the link between the NSO, the national planning entities, but not only. So we have quality data, and this data is used because the data is only useful if it's used. So is this link that we could have more of it or ensure it for the future. And the 8th and last recommendation regards communication, transparency, and accountability. And a lot of us, we have been involved in several discussions, and there's some documentation regarding that we need to build the public understanding and trust in official statistics. And that means investing in communication capacity, ensuring transparency. This overall, the more trust we can generate, and the better we communicate, the higher will be the uptake that will lead us to the next phases. So I think my time is up. It is a pleasure to present on behalf of the group. There's several colleagues in the call in this group, so please feel free to make any questions, all of us, in the respective chat, and we'll be very, very happy to respond. And don't forget to download the document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariana. This has really been an extensive undertaking, and the work is not finished. And I take the opportunity to also thank all the contributors. Several of them we will hear from as we move through today's event. And I urge you to read the Commission background document, as Mariana said, for more information about what the task team has found as important takeaways. I will just remind you that questions or comments to the presenters can be put in the Q&A chat, and we will pick up on a few of them later, or the presenters will answer them directly in the chat. We will next hear from a joint presentation from members of the UNECE Steering Group on Statistics for SDGs. This will be Ana Carmen Saura of the National Statistical Institute of Spain and Monika Gorzelak from Statistics Poland. So the steering group guides and coordinates work on SDGs in the UNECE region and have made several outputs, such as guidelines and tools that can be used by countries and organizations. Their in-depth review of lessons learned from providing statistics on SDGs is very much complementary to the IAG undertaking with their regional and national perspective. And Anna and Monika will now tell us more about their findings. So over to you, and I think Anna will go first.
Thank you, Liva. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to present the work that we have carried out in the UNECE region as regards the lesson learned on providing statistics from SDGs. Next slide, please. In the year 2024, at the halfway point of the 2030 agenda, the Conference of European Statisticians decided to undertake an in-depth review on lessons learned from providing the statistics on SDGs. The main objective of this exercise was to provide a future-oriented and strategic insight from the SDG process, and it has examined what has worked well, what has been challenged but has improved, and what remains a long-term challenge. This in-depth review has been prepared on the basis of a survey sent to countries. Then we have collected countries' practices, challenges, and lessons learned on 4 areas: on SDGs measurement, on coordination, collaboration, and partnership, on communication, and innovation. We received the reply of 41 countries with 262 countries example. Most of the countries belong to the UNEC region, but we also receive information and contribution from the Latin American and Caribbean countries and from Asia and the Pacific. Next slide, please. The in-depth review contains or presents the main issues, the challenges, as well as lessons learned on the 4 areas I mentioned before. And it also contains some recommendations that my colleague Monica is going to present after me. Then here we can see some examples of the lesson learned, but the list is longer and it can be consulted in the whole document. So we have some lesson learned on measurement, how the strengthening integrated data can improve the availability of SDGs indicator. On coordination, the importance of cooperation with stakeholders from the outset, or how the SDGs have reinforced cooperation within the national statistical system and with international organizations. We can see there is some kind of link between this lesson learned and the recommendation from the IAEG SDGs that Mariana has presented. Next slide, please. We also can observe some lesson learned on communication. The national reported platforms have made data on SDGs more accessible. We have also used infographic and visualization, and the use of new data sources and innovative technologies have also allowed NSIs to provide more data. So these other lessons learned are also linked with some of the recommendations, for instance, recommendation 8 on communication, or recommendation of the IAEG on organization strategy for implementing optimization. The difference is the focus, I think. The UNEC work has focused more on the country's experiences, while the IAEG SDGs provides a global overview. And to finish, next slide, please. Here we can see some of the benefits from the SDGs exercise. NSIs have empowered their mandate. Data communication has enhanced. We have achieved a wider audience on very different topics. The public is more aware of the importance and the role of National Statistical Offices, and on innovation we have also improved a lot. Now I give the floor to Monica to go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Yeah, that's the one. So let me now continue with the SDG challenges, because in fact, identifying challenges is central to all UNEC reviews, as it helps to improve coordination of statistical activities and address emerging issues in the region. So as you can see in the chart, according to our review, the top SDG challenges that NSOs continue to face include persistent data gaps, especially for hard to measure disaggregation categories, limited political support leading to insufficient resources, and just mentioned lower data availability, difficulties using new data sources, coordination issues, especially where there are many actors contributing to the SDG data production, and overly complex indicator methodologies, among others. However, these challenges often reflect the flip side of the SDGs' strengths, namely their comprehensive and inclusive design, which, despite its complexity, ultimately drives innovation and expands data coverage across national statistical systems. So in short, our review shows that for NSOs, the SDGs always have these two sides of the same coin. Among many challenges, there is a strategic one for the SDG monitoring, which may be overlooked, and this is SDG progress assessment. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So given the complexity of the framework and different levels of SDG monitoring, there is no single universally agreed methodology for the SDG progress assessment. And as a result, international organizations and NSOs often apply a range of approaches, which sometimes makes comparability a bit challenging and may also lead to different results. In the absence of clear guidance, some NSOs also choose not to assess SDG progress. So if unaddressed, this issue may affect the effectiveness of SDG framework, reduce policy relevance and use of official statistics, and weaken accountability. And to accelerate toward 2030, we need greater clarity and common understanding of where we stand, what has been achieved, and where acceleration is most urgently needed. And by extension, this lesson is also relevant for monitoring beyond 2030. So can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So to address this issue and support SDG progress measurement, the UNEC review recommends developing guidance for NSOs, and this guidance is currently being developed by the UNEC Steering Group on Statistics for the SDGs and is planned for publication later this year. Furthermore, communicating SDG progress will also be one of key themes at the upcoming UNEC expert meeting on statistics for the SDGs, so you are warmly invited to join us and contribute to this important exchange in April in Geneva. The next slide, please. And I'd like to highlight one more important point. Due to its future-oriented nature, UNEC review often, while also provides some more looking forward and strategic recommendations. But to keep it brief, the key recommendation here is that, statistical community should engage early in shaping post-2030 monitoring framework, drawing on SDG lessons to make sure that this new framework is both realistic and effective. So it's great to see discussions like this happening today. So once again, thank you very much for organizing this event. And the last but one, please, slide. Actually, the last one. So last but not least, UNEC recommendations and lessons can be found on UNEC Knowledge Hub on SDGs. And perhaps one more final remark to conclude. The UNEC SDG lessons and recommendations from an NSO perspective that we've just presented nicely complement today's background document findings, which shows that both global successes and global challenges are deeply rooted in national statistical realities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anna and Monica. And the insights here speaks to several of the key challenges that we NSOs are facing in the follow-up of the SDG framework. And it will also be a very important input to the next phase of the lessons learned task team. So I'm very happy that we also have you as experts with us there. Next, we will hear the perspective of the Committee for the Coordination of Statistical Activities, the CCSA, on lessons learned in their process by the custodian agencies. It will be presented by UNCTAD's Anu Peltola, and she is also the co-chair of the CCSA. So Anu, over to you.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues and friends. It's a pleasure to join you today in this very important discussion and to bring the perspectives from the CCSA, which is a network of 45 international organizations active in coordinating international statistics, mainly chief statisticians of international organizations. I'm delighted to share key lessons learned from custodian agencies of SDG indicators, drawing on insights collected across the CCSA. This process was led by FAO at the end of last year to provide feedback to the task team. We would like to thank UNST Secretariat and the IAG SDGs for the remarkable efforts undertaken for the Global Indicator Framework, jointly with countries, international organizations, and stakeholders. I think it's really key to reflect carefully on the lessons learned. I will highlight just the main points from the chief statisticians in the CCSA, drawing on the collective experience of agencies who have lived this process over the past decade and more. And these experiences resonate with those that we had also experienced in the UN Trade and Development, UNCTAD, as a custodian of some of the SDG indicators. So let me start with the early process of agreeing on the SDGs and their indicators in the next slide. One of the real successes was the inclusive nature of the process. International organizations could propose indicators, while member states made final decisions, creating ownership for countries as well. The tier classification system, especially tier 3, enabled rapid development of new metrics in areas like governance or illicit financial flows where nothing existed sometimes. So selection of indicators was not only limited to where data were available, it also led to major new developments globally and with countries. But of course, there were challenges. We saw a persistent disconnect between statisticians and policymakers in understanding the goals and indicators, especially at the start, some inconsistent application of tier criteria and political influence in indicator selection. Some indicators were adopted without proper feasibility assessments, leading to long delays before data were reported and gaps or unrealistic expectations. So what are the lessons learned here? Clear communication is essential. We learned a lot and we can build on that in future work, as well as transparent criteria for selecting and tiering indicators. The tiering of the indicators is something that definitely we must keep in mind in the future. We should prioritize smart targets, specific, measurable, achievable. Early involvement of the statistical community, as was already mentioned by colleagues in negotiations, is key, also to inform member states' considerations when they discuss the political perspectives. They should be informed of what can be measured and how. On the next slide, turning to roles and responsibilities of custodian agencies. Over time, roles became better defined. In the beginning, we didn't know exactly what it means, but there were good discussions to define, and custodian agencies took on methodological leadership and data flows coordination. The IAG SDGs and UNST provided the structures, and joint custodianships reduced duplication and brought collaboration like we've never seen before among the international organizations and countries. Standardized reporting procedures emerged, but at the start, it was not so clear what the roles are. This delayed capacity building and complicated resource planning. Sometimes it led to uneven adoption at national level, and we still see some of the discrepancies. There were some differences between global and national figures that frustrated countries, and the use of non-official data remained often contested, even though there were efforts to try and push for that as well. The lessons learned are, for instance, that future frameworks should define custodian roles early, resource them adequately, and establish clear protocols for alternative data and for harmonizing national and global estimates. Next, on the stakeholder engagement and coordination, the SDG agenda brought many new actors into the statistical space. So there was lots more interest from civil society, academia, private sector partners, new data communities. This broadened the conversation and created new forms of collaboration, and the IAG SDGs brought everyone together. Still, Coordination was often fragmented. It depended of the area and agencies involved. Some agencies approached countries separately, and early processes surely lacked transparency. But in the process, we learned a lot how to do this properly. National coordination mechanisms were uneven. Some countries had really prepared. Some didn't really have a clear role for the National Statistical Office, and potentially the work on SDGs has strengthened that as well. We should ensure early, continuous, inclusive engagement of stakeholders and strengthen national coordination structures going forward, and recognize that institutional capacity matters. On the development of concepts and methods, on the next slide, the SDG framework pushed the boundaries of what we measure. We developed new international standards, new metadata repositories, and global consensus on complex topics that previously did not have comparable measures. We moved Tier 2 indicators into operational status. This was really innovation under pressure, but we delivered. However, political negotiations sometimes overshadow technical experts, and custodian agencies lacked resources for testing and capacity building, which was then seen in countries. The main takeaway here is to involve subject matter experts early, especially for sensitive topics. Secure dedicated resources and maintain flexible processes for refining indicators and metadata to adjust to emerging topics. This brings me to the annual refinements and comprehensive reviews in 2020 and 2025. The next slide, please. This was something that created a good balance between stability and adaptation. Without waiting for a decade for updates in the indicators, we managed to bring more relevant indicators, share advances in data availability. But these reviews were also highly resource intensive, sometimes yielding limited changes, and assessing global applicability and data availability remained difficult. That said, we saw a huge progress from Tier 3 to Tier 1. In many areas of statistics, new indicators emerged. In the future, we hope these reviews could be continued, be even more efficient and inclusive, with streamlined criteria and digital tools encouraging continuous refinement. We need always a dynamic approach, and this is a good model of that. Finally, on SDG reporting, on the next slide. Global and regional reports enhanced visibility, build political momentum, and voluntary national reviews also encouraged countries to strengthen data systems. So this was a very welcome combination of reporting on progress. We saw lots of progress in data disaggregation, human rights-based approaches to data, gender equality. However, reporting cycles were sometimes hard to align with national needs for the data for policy. And sometimes the VNRs did not fully use the available data in the national statistical system. So there's certainly room for improvement there. What we can learn is to embed SDG reporting in national statistical cycles and policy cycles, strengthen data governance and interoperability. In closing, what emerges from all these lessons is a remarkably consistent message. Clarity, communication, coordination, and capacity are the foundations of a strong global indicator framework. Setting up a functioning global SDG indicator framework and managing to develop new indicators to measure complex issues, the notable strengthening of environmental and social statistics have been major achievements. As we look ahead to future global development agendas, the experience of custodian agencies captured so well by the FAO synthesis, which I'm drawing on, and the in-depth analysis carried out by the task team are really invaluable. We've built something ambitious and innovative together, a global indicator framework, but also learned for the future. It's crucial that the findings of this process be provided loud and clear to the future planning of development agendas, so that we can build on the efforts of the SDG indicator capacities that have been developed, but also the lessons learned from the process. Thank you so much. Back to you, Livi.
Thank you so much, Anu, for summarizing the custodian agency perspective here. And again, representing a National Statistical Office, I would say the whole SDG indicator process has also brought us closer to many of you in the international organizations that we did not interact with so much before the SDGs. And also the speed of development has really picked up for several areas. I mean, we have introduced quite new statistical areas to measure with this agenda. As Anu said in her presentation, the process brought many new actors to the table. So I'm happy to say that we will hear from the stakeholders next, and representing them is Barry Bain. He is with the International Agri-Food Network, where he advises on indicator-related issues, and today he'll present the stakeholders' insights on the Global SDG Indicator Framework development and operationalization. Thank you. Barry, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just to emphasize, although I'm from the private sector myself, this presentation has been produced by myself and civil society representatives, so it's looking at the perspective of all stakeholders. Next slide, please. Stakeholders were involved very much in the process of developing the Sustainable Development Goals. We had a voice, although it wasn't always heard, even though the co-facilitators were very supportive. But the involvement was restricted, although we were at the open groups. Next slide, please. The issues came after as the SDGs were developed, that what would happen going forward. And so civil society organizations and other stakeholders emphasized that we should be involved in the process in the group that became the IAG SDGs. We were very active from the start of the process, and that showed that civil society was at the very beginning pushing for disaggregation, which wasn't certain was going to happen, but now it's become part of the process. Next slide, please. We had early struggles to be heard. At the first meeting in New York, stakeholders didn't have a voice. We could attend but couldn't intervene. At the second meeting, when the formulation of the indicators began, there was a slightly flawed selection system in that there were 54 civil society attendees and none from the private sector. After a bit of advocacy, one private sector representative, me, was approved to attend. And so that's when I became very involved in this whole process. At that meeting, we were only allowed to make pre-prepared statements at the end of each session. And these were joint sessions, these were joint statements. And as you can imagine, it was a bit difficult for private sector and stakeholder to agree on all matters. Next slide, please. Things got better in Mexico when we were able to make separate pre-prepared statements at the end of each session. And at this point, stakeholders, private sector and civil society began to work together with the co-chairs to get to a situation where stakeholders could actually make full interventions during the session. So it's very restrictive at this stage, but the co-chairs were very helpful in this process. Next slide, please. You can see we have regular, the civil society, private sector have regular meetings with the co-chairs, in this case, Mexico. Next slide, please. They developed greater participation as it moved on, and the format changed. We had closed sessions for the first 2 days and then plenary sessions afterwards, which made coordination easier for the stakeholders. The big breakthrough came in Bahrain in November 2017, when stakeholders were finally allowed to make interventions during the sessions. And that meant we could respond to what was being said rather than just come in at the end and not necessarily be able to reflect what was happening. That was a great movement. I think everybody could see that this was a benefit. It created an inclusive, transparent structure, which benefited the whole process. Next slide, please. And one of the requests was that we could attend all the meetings, and at the 7th meeting in Vienna, the format was open to all stakeholders. And this gave more diverse and critical perspectives for the whole process. Next slide, please. That's part of that involvement. The stakeholders began to participate on panels. So basically, we were getting full participation in the whole process. Next slide, please. So we increasingly started to be included in the sessions as panelists and on the working groups. That was another move forward, that basically stakeholders were being integrated into the whole process. And one of the things that developed was the disaggregation meeting, a big policy of civil society. And this ended up in a paper being presented at the Statistical Commission. And this whole group of disaggregation, a lot of support from the Secretariat, particularly from Francesca. Next slide, please. So at the Addis Ababa meeting, stakeholders held a briefing and called for a side event at the first session of the Statistical Commission. And this was the first time the civil society and other stakeholders sat at the same table as the IEG SDG. This showed how close we've become in the process. Next slide, please. As you can see, the numbers initially in New York were very great, although no one could speak there. Numbers have declined, but there is a hard core of representatives of stakeholders who attend this meeting and have become very, very involved. So maybe quality rather than quantity now. Next slide, please. So I think that the evolution of the process has shown how stakeholders can make a major contribution to the UN system. And actually not just the IEG SDGs, but the whole of the indicator and SDG process. Stakeholders can help fill data gaps. This is something that was mentioned by the presentation from the agencies, that there are data gaps, and quite often civil society, private sector can help fill those, providing complementary data that official channels mightn't always be able to go. An example of this is the work of the SDG 16 data initiative. It took quite a few meetings before stakeholders got full participation, and I'd say that in any future process, it would be better if there could be full participation from the beginning for stakeholders. We have a lot to bring to the table. We've shown that we can behave responsibly and make major contributions. The IEG SDGs should be very proud that it's embraced this full stakeholder participation. And that is a lesson for other UN fora where stakeholder participation is still very, very restricted. And the other aspect of this is that the process has shown that stakeholders can work together. They're not in opposing camps. They can work together. There's been great relations between the private sector and civil society and academia in this. And that sort of process can be reflected in other UN fora. So thank you very much. And I'm ahead of time.
Great, Barry, thank you. And so here we got a glimpse of all that happened over the years. It's fun to look back at some pictures and stories that happened 10 years back in time. And we got some behind the scenes information. And it's interesting to see how the participation has developed over the years, with a big interest from the community in the beginning, with a lot of participants, but maybe decreasing number of participants. But I would say the contribution have been kept very high. And as you say, this process has shown that you are a resource to the community, as a community to the UN. So that's great to have this also documented for future processes.
Thank you.
So we will move on to the Q&A session, and we have quite a few things coming up in the Q&A here in the webinar. I would like to first go to the first question that came in, and I know, Monica, you have already also answered it in the chat, but maybe you could pick it up a bit. This regards the systematic use of Earth observation data, satellite data, alternative data sources. It's a good question, and we are working on it. I would like to remind you that we also have a working group under the IAG who works specifically on geospatial data. So if you go to the IAG homepage, you will find more about what they have done over the years. But Monica, would you like to come in and repeat a bit what you said in the chat there?
Well, of course, thank you very much indeed. So, I agree. Using observations requires specific skills and expertise, and some NSOs already have this capacity. For example, Statistics Poland used EOS for agricultural statistics well before the SDGs. However, some NSOs do not have this capacity, so building capacity remains essential in this area. And one practical solution that I suggested in the Q&A box is, to mainstream of observations is to foster or strengthen collaboration between NSOs and national geospatial information agencies, because they already have this expertise, they already have these skills, and such partnerships can, definitely facilitate application of geospatial data for SDG monitoring and beyond 2030 as well. And as you said, Liva, there are great many resources and tools already developed by working group on geospatial information, like, for example, this SDG geospatial roadmap, and absolutely fantastic list of SDG indicators where geospatial information can be used to calculate them. That's a great starting point for countries wondering where to use it. Yeah, so thank you very much indeed. Yeah, that's from me.
Thank you very much, Monica. And I also tempted to say that in the UNECE region, we also collaborate closely with the geospatial community, also at the management level. So that's also a way to move forward to integrate the statistical community and the geospatial communities. I would like to go next to a question about, and this is quite relevant because we are still, at least 4 years from 2030. So do you think that the lessons learned could still be applied and implemented to achieve the SDGs from now to 2030, or will it surely serve after 2030 agenda? Mariana, you have been saying something about that. Maybe you would like to repeat that also in plenary.
Thank you. Yes, so initially when we started, it was thinking in the future, but as we progress, I think almost all the recommendations, if not at least from second to the second to the 8th, they all relate to now, and everything is related to strengthening the system, strengthening coordination, invest in the national statistical systems, invest in the data flows, improving the standard, improving communication, improving transparency. All of these are very crucial for us to invest between now and the end, particularly as some countries will initiate their acceleration processes to be able to measure, to be able to use the data, to be able to support the decision making. They are very, very aligned with what we still can do before we arrive to 2030.
Thank you, Mariana. I may actually pass the next one to you too, but maybe also Barry wants to come in, or Anu.
Yes.
So someone says it's exciting to hear, Sainara says, it's exciting to hear reflections on the role of alternative data. Could we hear initial thoughts from the speakers on the role of that citizen-generated data could potentially play in a new indicator framework post-2030 agenda to complement official statistics, including to help overcome mentioned challenges related to data disaggregation? I think we have several speakers who may want to say something on this, but who wants to go first? Anyone?
I can go first while
Mariana,
the colleagues prepare. Okay. So one of the fourth recommendation of the report is actually on the optimizing the implementation. And we mentioned the citizen data. Citizen data is still starting. The Danish Human Rights Institute is one of the actors. We have the collaborative on citizen data. There is been use of citizen data to measure indicators, for instance, on environmental, also 1662 on satisfaction public services. And it helps, at least, if you allow me to speak as UNDP and not as a co-chair for a second. Okay, as UNDP, we have been investing, for instance, in helping linking the data with including the population in the decision-making part regarding what affects them and the solutions to what we can do, in this case, for effective service delivery. And it allows us to zoom in certain areas that the survey cannot reach, because we cannot go to that level of disaggregation for everything due to cost. So we are very passionate about it, and even more and more in love every day. So I'll give space for the others also to respond.
Yes, anyone else who wants to pick up? Barry, please.
Citizen data is a massive resource. Instead of just having statistical offices working on this data, you can have millions, if not billions, of people contributing data. And that's something that obviously needs to be filtered, needs to be make sure that our data is reliable, but it is an amazing resource. There's also private sector data as well, which again is a massive resource which could be used, and it is little used in official data, but it's increasingly so. The other thing about citizen data is that involving citizens in this, you're also helping implementation of the SDGs, because you're involved. You're saying, this is what we want data on this, because this is what we're trying to achieve in terms of the goals itself. So it really is a win-win.
Great, thank you, Barry. Anu, yes.
Thank you very much, Liva. I think it's an interesting question, and now there's more and more attention being paid on measurement of broader progress, well-being, inclusion, sustainability, where I think citizen data can provide really a valuable resource going forward for more granular and timely insights. And also in the current discussions on measuring progress beyond GDP, there's a lot of discussions about data innovation, about new data sources. How can we tap this in more systematically into the process of measuring progress? I typically like to remind policymakers of the fundamental principles of official statistics, where in Principle 5, it says that data for statistical purposes may be drawn from all types of sources. Even though it only mentions surveys and administrative data, there's more and more discussion about all other different data sources that we should be using. And I think here, in collaboration with official statisticians, the National Statistical Office, a lot can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. And yes, again, I think as also a National Statistical Office, it is a journey to kind of start using that kind of data and include it in your monitoring. So we are learning as well. I would like to give the word to William Readhead, who is a speaker in the next session, but he put up his hand. Please, William.
Thanks. This is Will Readhead from UN Water. I'm also a big fan of citizen science data, and that's something that we're working on. But I want to highlight that there is a basic dissonance here in the fact that between the fact that the global indicators are supposed to be following standardized methodologies and fitting into national statistical systems. So that tends to make them very technical and rigid, whereas these non-traditional sources of data are just the opposite. They tend to be very fluid, which is to their benefit, but that makes it very difficult for them to be used as official statistics, although we've seen with the ambient water quality data, it's possible. But I think it's actually setting the wrong incentive. I think if you want to empower people on the ground, you actually need to build in more flexibility into these global indicator methodologies so people can innovate, they can be locally relevant, and all those different things. So I think one of the things we need to think about for the future within the IAG is how rigid should these indicator methodologies be? Because I think it's actually causing us a disservice in some ways. Thanks.
Thank you, William. I will take a last comment on this topic from Monica. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make a very general comment on the use of alternative data sources based on the UNEC review. So the potential is there, absolutely. However, the UNEC review shows that many NSOs are not yet able to use these new data sources at scale. And common challenges include what has already been said, this, on one hand, limited technical expertise, but also legal and privacy constraints when it comes to those privately held data, plus concerns about data quality. So as a result, only a small number of NSOs in the UNEC region currently use big data or citizen-generated data for SDG monitoring. However, the use of geospatial data, including Earth observation, is far more advanced, but still, even the capacity is uneven. And the UNEC recommends, starting with very practical steps. So sharing best practices at the international level, transferring technical know-how, and also developing common tools to assess the quality of new data sources. However, to really make these alternative data usable at scale, so perhaps more coordinated action is needed across institutions, technology, and governance, with probably statistical systems playing a coordinating and this standard setting role. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. The last topic I want to touch on in this session is we also got a comment now in the chat about the Beyond GDP, and we're very glad to have Anu here, who is in the Secretariat for the Beyond GDP high-level expert group. So, which lessons from developing and operationalizing the SDG Global Indicator Framework are most critical to carry forward in discussion on future development agendas or in the Beyond GDP work that you have been very close to, Anu?
Thank you for the question. I think definitely the key issue is to build on progress achieved. The data and statistics that have been developed, the methodologies that are comparable internationally, all the progress that has been achieved with the SDG indicators is critical to feed into the future development agendas and also the metrics for Beyond GDP, including the processes of broader collaboration and coordination among stakeholders and how we can strengthen that further. What we need to think from the start is plan for resources and investment in data and capacity building. At least we have to say this has to be considered. Whoever will come with the funds, it remains to be seen. But we already have the mechanisms to work together and support each other, and that's already a big plus. I think we should not be limited to what data exists. It should be, especially at the start, we should recognize that there may be needs beyond what we can do currently. There should be a dynamic, evolving indicator framework. While I think many SDG indicators can serve for the Beyond GDP dashboard as well. I think the point of relying on professional statisticians for methodology development and indicator development is key, but at the same time, it has to be a multidisciplinary process. It has to involve others than just one domain of statisticians or just statisticians to reach out to scientists, other stakeholders, have the policy dialogue to ensure that what we do meets the needs. Because we have to admit that data is increasingly on the policy debates. How do we maintain the strong role of official statisticians there? Because we are seen as neutral, as reliable source for information for development agendas, and integrate our data more closely with policy frameworks and decision makings. Data can really inspire change. We need to be able to say, what is the value that data provides in this process for progress and better decisions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anu. And I will take the opportunity to also tell the participants that there will be a high-level forum on the Monday, 2nd March, about the Beyond GDP and how the statisticians can support that process. So I will close the Q&A for now and thank all again the speakers in the first session. It was Mariana, Anna, Monica, Anu, and Barry. And we will now move on to the next session titled SDG Acceleration Strategies to 2030. And first in this one, I'd like to invite Denise Kronenberger. She's the other co-chair of the IAG SDGs to present Brazil's experience on using data to help accelerate SDG implementation and focus on the next 5 years. So over to you, Denise.
Thank you, Liv. good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. With only 5 years remaining to the 23rd, Brazil is strengthening the role of SDG indicators, not only as monitoring tools, but as instruments to accelerate implementation. In this presentation, I will briefly outline how Brazil is using indicators to support policy prioritization, institutional coordination, and evidence-based decision-making in the final stretch of the 23rd Agenda. This slide shows the indicators as accelerators of the 23rd Agenda. Beyond monitoring progress, indicators are increasingly used to support policy prioritization, coordination across institutions, and accountability. Our approach combines 3 core principles: national ownership, international comparability, and direct policy relevance. This balance is essential to ensure that indicators effectively support decision-making while remaining aligned with the global SDG indicators. Next slide, please. Brazil has advanced in the nationalization of SDG targets, a process led by the Institute for Applied Economic Research, IPEA. Building on this process, the next step is the definition of National SDG Indicator Framework, coordinated by the IBGE, the Brazilian National Statistical Office. This work is being conducted within the institutional framework of the National Commission for the SDGs, ensuring alignment with national priorities and interinstitutional coordination. The national framework will be designed to complement the global SDG indicator framework, while also incorporating indicators that are particularly relevant to Brazil's development context. Next, please. A key element of this strategy is strengthening coordination among national data producers. Brazil is organizing a national meeting of the SDG data producers within the framework of the National Commission for the Sustainable Development Goals. The objectives are to discuss national indicators with harmonized concepts and methodologies and jointly identify data gaps and opportunities. This coordinated approach not only strengthens national monitoring, but also contributes to improving the availability and the quality of indicators reported at the global level. Next, please. Brazil continues to invest in the expansion and improvement of SDG indicator production, including methodological advances and broader coverage. A key priority is data disaggregation, particularly by race or color, which is essential to operationalize principle of leaving no one behind, and to better monitor structural inequalities. In addition, Brazil is developing indicators for the SDG 18, reflecting specific national development priorities. These efforts are coordinated under the governance of the National Commission for Sustainable Development Goals, in close collaboration with national data producers. Next, please. Beyond production, Brazil is strengthening the use of indicators for policy action. The SDG dashboard was developed within the framework of National Commission. It integrates official SDG indicators from the Brazilian SDG platform with information on public policies and programs related to the 2030 Agenda. This integration helps bridge statistical monitoring and policy implementation, enhancing the usability and the relevance of SDG indicators. Next, please. The Brazilian SDG dashboard is a strategic platform developed to monitor the progress of the 2030 Agenda in Brazil. These tools integrate data on government planning, official SDG indicators, and funding lines to ensure transparency in public policies. It is structured in 5 analytical blocks, allowing for the cross-referencing of SDG with the multi-year plan, aiming to facilitate social control and evidence-based decision-making. Next, please. In the dashboard, the SDG targets are linked to the programs of the federal government plan. Next, please. The Brazilian SDG indicators, the global SDG indicators, are in the Brazilian SDG platform, and the dashboard of the SDGs use these global indicators to give support for the policy public. Next, please. Last. To support this expanding agenda, Brazil is also investing in institutional capacity. The dedicated SDG team has been expanded to respond to growing demands for indicator production, disaggregation, and methodology development. These investments are designed not only to meet current needs, but also to strengthen the national statistical systems and ensure sustainability beyond 2030. The objective is to leave a lasting data legacy that continues to support development policies in the future. Next, please. So, thank you very much for your attention. My contact is here, my email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise, and also for giving us some insights to how SDG indicators are used in the national context and how this fits well into the SDG focus in your country. I see actually comments here in the Q&A that, you know, if Brazil can do it, why cannot other countries do it this well? I also noticed that you are successful in building your own institutional capacity and resource allocation to deal with this, and this is, of course, important for the NSO to have resources to work on the SDGs. I would now like to invite the last speaker of today's webinar, William Readhead from UN Water, to present tools for accelerating process for the SDGs. So over to you, Will.
Good day, everyone, and it's great to be here with you all. So I am representing UN Water in Geneva. UN Water is the UN coordination mechanism for all agencies that are doing something related to water and sanitation. There is no single UN agency on water, so that's why we need a coordination mechanism. Next slide, please. So we basically, we work with about 40 UN agencies who are related to water and sanitation in some way. And there's an overall framework that was developed in 2020 as part of the Secretary General's Decade of Action to deliver the SDGs. And this global acceleration framework has 5 pillars, and you can see them here on this slide. Those pillars are financing, data information, capacity development, innovation, and governance. So these are, you know, common enabling conditions that member states can focus on to accelerate on the delivery of SDG 6. It's a conceptual framework more than anything. But one of them, data information, is about monitoring, which includes global indicator data, but it also includes other sources of evidence that can feed into accelerating of delivery of SDG 6. So that's what I'll be focusing on. So I am the coordinator of the UN Water Integrated Monitoring Initiative for SDG 6. We are a project with 8 UN agencies who are the custodians of the 11 SDG 6 global indicators. And we are funded by Switzerland, Germany, Netherlands, EC, and Austria to really promote these 11 SDG 6 global indicators. Most of these indicators are completely new since 2015, and they needed a lot of help to be, get core capacity in member states and get, the baseline and everything we wanted to do to achieve SDG 6. So we are a project we've been running for 10 years now, and we are now entering our 4th and possibly final phase. And we're doing a midterm review of how effective the initiative has been in supporting SDG 6. Next slide, please. So what we found through this review has actually been very interesting in light of what this webinar is talking about. So we've included a few questions about how the Integrated Monitoring Initiative has contributed to the progress of toward SDG 6. And remember that our mandate is basically promoting these 11 indicators and building capacity for them at the country level, but also promoting how data are used at the country level. So you can see here on this slide, for example, that we find that 60% of countries who reported in our, we did an online survey, I should mention, we did an online survey of monitoring focal points as part of the midterm review. So 60% of those who responded to the survey found that our initiative contributed to their progress toward SDG 6, which is definitely what we wanted to hear. Next slide, please. Where it contributed most, you can see on this slide: strengthened data collection and reporting, improved cross-sectoral coordination, enhanced capacity and awareness. So these are all quite strongly reported by the people that responded to the survey as where we've added value toward SDG 6. Next slide, please. We also asked them about how often are the global indicator data used in national planning and decision-making. So you can see here that about 2/3 of people who responded said it was moderately frequent or more frequent than that, which is a pretty good result. Next slide, please. And then we asked them at what level are they actually using these data. Okay, so the strongest one by far was the ministerial national government level, but we also saw the interministerial and coordination was really important, as were some other categories there too. And this is consistent with what I just heard from my Brazilian colleague about how the data are being used. So this survey is covering all member states. Keep that in mind. Okay, next slide, please. What types of data, what types of use have they had for the SDG 6 data? The strongest one, which was over 65%, was setting, tracking, and adjusting national targets, followed by national, subnational strategy and policy formulation, and followed by monitoring of development plans and strategies. Okay, so the data are definitely being used, but I would note that it's used kind of at the central government level as opposed to maybe a subnational or a more local level. And that's an important lesson for us there. Next slide, please. We also asked them for specific examples of how the data are being used. These examples here in the box are anonymized. I mean, the survey was anonymous, but these came from actual countries. So you can see, for example, revision of national water and sanitation policies to reflect SDG 6 targets, updating of national water policies and water laws. So we kind of group these into governance, finance, equity, and resilience. And you can read this for yourself, but this really shows, I think, that SDG 6 data is not just about global reporting, but really can be a systemic enabler of evidence-based decision-making at the national level. And that's something that, I mean, in my opinion, is much more important than this global reporting. It's about how countries can use these data to actually deliver SDG 6 on the ground. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's all about the midterm review of the Integrated Monitoring Initiative, but one of the other products of UN Water are what we're calling country acceleration case studies. So every year we do 3 case studies, the case studies in 3 different countries, each of them looking at one of the SDG 6 indicators. And we're using the global indicator data as a starting point to identify, hey, this country has shown significant progress at the national level toward this particular indicator. Let's find out how and why. So we look under the hood and we figure out what are the enabling conditions that drove this measurable demonstrated acceleration. So whereas the previous slides were talking about kind of how countries value SDG 6 and the data, these case studies are actually looking at where they've proven demonstrated acceleration and looked at how they've done it. And it used that global acceleration framework that I mentioned with those 5 pillars, one of which was data and information. So here are just a few examples of where data has played an important role toward measurable acceleration. So for example, Czechia has an annual report on water data, bringing together ministries of environment and agriculture. So it's bridging the gap between these ministries and improving coordination. In Bhutan, their acceleration was really, they actually improved the access to safely managed drinking water from 25% to 75% during the SDG period, which is an enormous improvement. And they did this through installing water quality testing facilities and conducting water testing in every district around indicator 611. This is an example of where the existence of the indicator drove actual acceleration. And we've got more examples like this, but it's really quite compelling. And this really shows the value of the global indicator framework. And the next slide, final slide, just my final thoughts then here. I mean, as you can probably tell, I'm a big fan of making the global indicators relevant to countries for their own policy needs and not just about global reporting. But the indicator framework, in my opinion, never really clearly identified what its purpose was. Is it about global reporting? Is it about strengthening countries? They're not necessarily the same thing. So I think for the future, we should really be very clear about what the framework is for and design the indicators with that in mind. So this is the first 2 bullets. The indicators also need to map exactly to the targets. This came up in one of the earlier presentations. The targets need to have levels of ambition. They need to be normative. Some of them are not. And they need to actually be able to interpret them. Because believe it or not, some of these indicators, we don't know whether we want it to go up or down. That's something we should improve in the future. And then lastly, if the indicators are meant to be a management tool for countries, then they need to be designed as such so that they can be localized through disaggregation, contextualization, etc. And that's what the countries really need, rather than just a single value that's measured at the national level at one point every few years. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Will. I very much support you on the last points there. This is the concern also of the countries. How can we utilize the global indicators also for national policies? And you've showed us some very good examples of how working with indicators within one SDG impacts positively in the direction of data-driven policy development and progress towards reaching the targets. So I'm tempted to just continue a question we got in advance of this webinar to you, and how can existing SDG data be better used to support real-time decision-making and course correction, rather than primarily serving reporting and accountability functions? I think you already touched a bit upon it, but you could spend a couple of more minutes on elaborating on that. Thank you.
Sure. I would be so bold as to say they were not designed to do that. They are not the global indicators, measured at the national level once every few years, are neither real time nor are they localized. But that's okay. I mean, if they're primarily a global reporting mechanism, that's perfectly fine. But as I said, we want to actually try to bridge that gap, bring it down to the countries to make it relevant to them. So what we found is useful is using the global indicators as a foot in the door. It creates a conversation, it raises awareness, it fosters a bit of competition between countries. But it can be used actually as an entry point to strengthen country monitoring systems, which they have higher granularity, higher resolution. They can be more spatially and temporally responsive. So I would say that until we can actually make the global indicators themselves higher resolution, I think they're a great entry point for empowering national monitoring systems to do that.
Yes, thank you. I also see a few questions in the Q&A. Some of them are relatively complex. I'm not sure we're going to go into all of them. I will encourage the panelists or the presenters to answer if they would like. What I see, the last one is, did the reports have any recommendation on the lessons learned about the progress of localization of the SDGs? This is something we will touch a bit upon in the phase 2 of the lessons learned project. So I definitely hope to describe more about the localization and the importance of that there. Denise, are you still with us? I cannot see on the screen, but I have a couple of questions for you. I think is she not there? There you are. Yes. So we had also a question ahead here. In the final years to 2030, where can SDG monitoring add the greatest value for acceleration? Through timeliness, disaggregation, integration of data sources, etc., and or stronger links to the policy processes. Would you like to give your thoughts about that, Denise?
Yes. Thank you, Liv. SDG monitoring, yes, can add the greatest value for acceleration in the final years to 2030 by strengthening its direct linkage to policy processes with timelines, disaggregation, and data integration serving this objective, not operating in isolation. Policy linkage is the main leverage point. At this stage of the agenda, most countries already know what the main challenges are. The bottleneck is no longer indicator availability per se, but the translation of SDG evidence into actionable policy decisions. Monitoring adds the most value when it informs where to act, whom to prioritize, and whether interventions are working, and how the other dimensions contribute to the acceleration. Timelines, for example, enabling course correction, disaggregation, targeting those being left behind, integration of data sources, seeing systems, not silos, stronger links to policy processes, turning data into action.
Thank you, Denise. Lots of good advice and interesting topics to touch upon there. So I think we are coming to the end of the Q&A. We still we don't have many new questions coming in. I have maybe not so many left. I have one more, Denise, for you. What is a practical change that can be done, technical or institutional, that could improve the impact of SDG data by 2030? Any thoughts about that? And I will also encourage, if there are other presenters today who would like to come in at the end of this Q&A and say some words or addressing some of the questions that have come up. Denise, please.
Yes, Liv, in my point of view, one practical change is institutionalize a national mandate data governance framework led by the National Statistical Office and the embedded in policy cycles. What this matters, the single most effective way to improve the impact of SDG data by 2030 is not creating new indicators, but ensuring that existing data are systematically produced and actually used in decision-making. These require an institutional, not only technical shift.
Yeah, totally agree.
Clear institutional mandate, interoperability by design, integration with policy cycles, sustained coordination mechanisms, and so on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And this is not all about the indicators as such. It's about developing the statistical systems, which I think should be the underlying purpose of this, that we have to develop robust and good statistical systems in the countries. Okay, so I can see people are trying to raise hands. We unfortunately cannot enable microphones at this stage. So if you have something you want to say, please put it in the chat. I will ask if there are any of the presenters who wants to come in at the end now with any comments or thoughts. Otherwise, I will thank again the speakers in this session and also the audience for coming with very good questions. I hope we have answered most of them, but we will also try to follow up in the chat here. So I will then give the floor back to Yoongi Min, who will give her closing remarks. So over to you, Yoongi.
Thank you very much, Liva, and also a good thanks and to our presenter and to all of you who joined us today and also contributed to such a rich and substantive discussion. So I will now try to summarize because there's a lot of good recommendation at different level at the global, country and the region thematic levels for the implementation and how to accelerate. But this event has reinforced one clear message, which is the work of the past decade is not something to set aside. It's something to build on. So the methodological advances, the institutional partnership, the data system established under the SDG Indicator Framework represent a hard-won global public good. So as we enter the final years to 2030, the challenges is to apply what we have learned, not only to the future development frameworks, but also right now to accelerate progress on the goals. So the recording of today's event and all the presentation will be available shortly on the meeting webpage. So my colleague will show the link to the event page, and it's also available on the statistical side event page. So please join next week on the 18th February for the fourth and the final high-level webinar in the lead up to the Statistical Commission. So this event will focus on the leveraging AI in the production of official statistics. So you can find all the information also on the Statistical Commission website and the registration. So thank you very much and hope to see many of you soon at the Statistical Commission. So have a good day. Bye-bye.